ready to go then, aren't we? Right. Okay then. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the 4C Community Centre in Ashton. First thing I should say is thanks for braving this very, very cold weather to be here tonight. It's a real pleasure to see so many of you filling out all these seats. I'm Rob Parsons. I'm a journalist. I work for Reach PLC, which publishes the Manchester Evening News. It's great to be here. I was looking at the listings for the 4C Centre and see that if this was a Tuesday night, currently it would be Boogie with Brenda, which is the kind of keep fit class that I think we all probably need after Christmas. So if you've turned up expecting to Boogie with Brenda, you're going to be disappointed. You won't be burning any calories tonight, but you will get the chance to ask any burning questions you have for Mayor Andy Burnham about the big events here in Greater Manchester. I mentioned the weather. We're going to be keeping an eye on it. Our plan is to run the whole thing, all the way until 9 o'clock, the scheduled endpoint. But if it really starts looking bad and it looks like we have to cut things short a little early so we can all get home and avoid the treacherous conditions, I will let you know that. But hopefully that won't happen. So we want plenty of questions from the audience tonight. We're running until 9 p.m. I've shortlisted a number of questions that have been sent in by the audience beforehand, so we will be coming to different members of the audience. We've got a few different subject areas to cover, but do put your hand up if you've got a question that relates to sort of the area that we're on, and we'll have time for some sort of miscellaneous questions at the end as well. So the only other thing that I would say, just before I bring in Andy, just for a few brief words, is we're all here to hear Andy's answers to your questions, to get through as many questions as we can. So just, be courteous to Andy when he's answering, be respectful to each other when you're asking your questions, and hopefully we'll all have an insightful and informative 90 minutes. So we'll go to the questions. Just have a few brief words from Andy. Just before we do, just to mention, we have representatives from Tameside Council, Greater Manchester Police, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue, Transport for Greater Manchester, as well as the Deputy Mayor for Policing, Kate Green, who's here. So if Andy needs to phone a friend at any point during proceedings, he's got their expertise to call on. So without further ado, a few words from Andy.
Well, thanks, Rob. Evening, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for coming on a cold night. But it's actually brilliant to see so many of you here. That tells me that you're engaged, hopefully, with what we're doing in Greater Manchester, and look forward to having some frank exchanges with you, because there's always things you need to get my mind on that perhaps we're not focusing on enough. So it's to hear from you tonight. It's the main thing, to let you ask your questions. I won't speak for a long time. We do have Deputy Mayor Kate Green here, so my team is with me. The Chief Constable is here, the leader of the council. We're going to look forward, aren't we, Eleanor, to describe how this time next year, we can pick this up when we discuss it, but I know it's always dangerous to make a politician's claim at the start, isn't it? But I think your borough is going to have the best public transport system in the country outside of London this time next year, when rail comes into the B network. So I want to explain a bit more about that so everyone understands the opportunity in front of Tameside. So that's a big thing, but I'm sure you've got loads of other things on your mind, and I don't mind. Honestly, you can ask. From my point of view, obviously the chair will decide, but you can ask whatever you want to, and we're here to hopefully, have a good exchange. So yeah, I'll leave it there, Rob, and more than happy to get on with it. But thank you again, everyone, for coming.
Fantastic. So we will, as Andy says, we will get on to transport, the B network, trains, buses. I tend to find that those subjects come up a lot at these events a little bit later. First, I thought we'd start with a question on equalities. We've got a few sent in on a similar sort of vein beforehand. So we have a question from Afzal Fayez, who is in the audience. Afzal, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. My question is that how can city leadership better engage communities who feel politically invisible, and particularly young people and ethnic minorities in large cities like Manchester? Thank you.
Just
Okay.
before you answer that, Andy,
Yes.
we had another question from Julia Sirigu, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, who said, which are the initiatives organised by the GMCA to better integrate foreign communities in the region with a specific focus on the Italian community? So I guess the two questions that relate to sort of community relations and the sort of cohesiveness of our communities.
Well, it's the crucial question of our times in some ways, isn't it? Because, you know, we all, I'm sure, kind of feel the change that's been around in the country, the way in which I think social media is kind of almost pulling at the fabric and pulling people apart a little. You know, the great strength of our city region is that it's always been a place where people line up together of all faiths, all races, and we've got to work hard in 2026 to keep that. I said in one of the messages I did, and I include myself in this, by the way, I'm not just aiming at someone or lecturing anybody. We all need to spend a bit less time on screens and more time in places like this. And thank you to the brilliant volunteers here. There's a pottery class going on down there, and I was asking, could I go and do pottery with them? Actually, it felt like it might be more relaxing. But I think there's got to be more of that, I think. A bit of just leaning out a bit more and say, no, I'm going to make a bit more of an effort. And you've done that by being here tonight. And I really respect you for it. But I think we've all just got to just do that extra thing to have more face-to-face interaction. I think the kind of world we live in, where it's done via screens, and it's anonymized half the time, it's tearing away at things, isn't it? So you asked me the question, obviously, is what we're doing. You know, people aren't invisible. We have panels across the combined authority to make sure all the voices are represented in the work of Greater Manchester. Elizabeth Cameron is here, who is, or was, I should say, Elizabeth, the first chair of our race equality panel, and that is going from strength to strength, actually. It's really bedded in now. And interestingly, you linked it to young people. Elizabeth was there at the start when it was Bev Hughes and I before, but Kate and I now, where we asked the panel to bring through a civic leadership programme for young people who felt that they couldn't access leadership positions in Greater Manchester from the black community, the Asian community, you know, all communities. And we've got this mentoring programme now that's beginning to open up those opportunities and those pathways. So we may not talk about it as much as we should, to be honest, but the infrastructure is definitely there. The commitment is there. You know, from my point of view, I'm always, as Mayor of Greater Manchester, going to, you know, be steadfast in our commitment to what this city region has always stood for, which is all people of all backgrounds working together, trying to make the place better for everybody. And nothing and no change in the political weather is going to stop us from doing that. I think in some ways, if I look at both the UK and the world, I like to see us as a bit of a beacon in the dark or a little haven in the storm. You know, we are still holding true to what we've always been about. Yes, we need to address people's concerns about immigration, some of the issues that come out of that, but not doing that and then changing ourselves and who we are and how we've been. And to me, I believe that so passionately. As mayor, I always refer back. People may be bored of hearing me say it, but I always will say it. This is the city region where the cotton workers in 1862 refused to handle slave-picked cotton. Now, there are kind of forefathers, foremothers who took that decision in a world when they were living in the most humble circumstance, and they still took that stand. And I always point back to that to say they did that. And I think we're kind of letting that legacy down if we don't stand true to our enduring values as Greater Manchester.
Thank you, Andy. So before we move on to a different topic, does anyone else in the audience have any questions sort of on this theme relating to...
You mentioned the Italian community. I'm
yes.
sorry, Rob.
Yes.
I mean, we do work hard. I mean, the Italian community has historical roots in Ancoats. And there's an annual, I'm trying to remember, I'm looking at Kate now to see, It's a saint's name, isn't it, as it would be? And I'm trying to think. Anyway, the Lord Mayor of Manchester, currently, Carmine Grimshaw, Councillor Carmine Grimshaw, is, from the community, the Mancunian Italian community. And he keeps asking me to go, and I've not ever made it. So I'm going to commit tonight in respect of that question. I will be in Ancoats later this year, because I think we've got to honour everyone's traditions, haven't we? But in doing so, recognise that we're all now leaning together as a single Greater Manchester. But yeah, thanks. I've never been asked that before, but it's nice to be able to recognise
happy.
that.
And if Mr. Grimshaw is watching on the live stream, he can hold you to that.
He will, though. I know. If you know our Lord Mayor, he doesn't mess about. So.
Absolutely. So we've got a question there from the chap in the audience.
Thank you. Over the past 6 months, I've been fighting for my fellow students and workers after discovering multiple instances of breaches of the agency worker regulations and employment law at one of the Greater Manchester universities, which evidence suggests they have been deliberately covering up. These actions affect students who rely on this employment to survive, including international students and those from low-income backgrounds, unsupported by employment unions or the protections afforded to employees due to being classed as agency workers. As a champion of the Greater Manchester University Civic Agreement, the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter and the Good Employment Week, would the Mayor kindly meet with me to further discuss this matter and to see if there's any support which he can offer to us as students who are proud to reside in Greater Manchester? And finally, would the Mayor join me in praising the Growth Company and Citizens Advice Employment Support Service, whose pro bono work with their legal partners is an invaluable service for residents like me who are unable to afford to pay for legal support?
On that last point, it is a really good scheme, isn't it? This is I went to an event with them recently. So this, for those who don't know, law firms working as a collective across Greater Manchester, supported by our Growth Hub, where lawyers are giving pro bono time in, aren't they, to support people raising important issues like the one you've mentioned. So thank you for raising that. And again, another thing we probably should be giving more prominence to. I think the first thing I would say is, could you, I will make sure we take your contact details. It would be good to start if you could send me the dossier of evidence, if you wouldn't mind, working with the legal support that you've got. And then let me have a look at it. And of course, in principle, I'm open to a meeting. I mean, we can't and don't have the ability to order or mandate universities. They are independent of us. However, I can't hear what you've just said and say, well, it's for the universities. I'm obviously keen to take a look at the evidence. And of course, as you say, some universities are registered under the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter, and we take that as a very, very esteemed, prestigious designation. And if there is anything where they are falling short, if they have that designation, that is a lever that we have, because obviously we can remove membership of the charter should there be evidence to support that. So I can't say more not knowing the detail of what you're raising, but thank you for doing so.
Thank you, Andy. So you've been asked about how our communities can better integrate together. Moving on to transport now, we're talking about how our different modes of transport can integrate together in Greater Manchester. We've had some submitted questions. Unfortunately, 2 of the 3 people who submitted them aren't here, so I'll ask those questions. One is from Judith Hilton, who asks, what are the plans for a combined public transport service, i.e. one ticket for all? And Nick Davies asks, I have seen that the B Network will next year introduce tap and go and multimodal tickets for the local railways. Will these methods allow discounts for young person rail cards or disabled rail cards? And just on that theme of sort of the integration of public transport in Greater Manchester, we have a question from Steve Hatton, who I'm hoping is in the audience somewhere. Steve? Steve Hatton? No, never mind. Well, I'll ask Steve Hatton's question as well. Steve asks, will you be able to guarantee that buses in Greater Manchester will always accept cash and will never become a digital track and trace system? So all slightly different questions, but all relating to, I guess, the overall vision for the Beat network, which is, with one pass, you can get on the different modes of transport and get to where you need to go in Greater Manchester. So yeah, first question is one ticket for all. Second question, discounts for young person rail cards and disabled rail cards. And third question, will buses in Greater Manchester always accept cash?
Good, okay.
Nuts and bolts questions.
Yeah, and that's good. And you knew you wouldn't get away without hearing yellow buses mentioned quite a few times tonight, didn't you? So here we go. But I'll come back to what I said at the start. You are going to have the best and most integrated public transport system in the country this time next year. Let me just explain. So already, you have a tram system that a lot of other boroughs would love to have. You have a new interchange. Obviously, you have your buses under public control now. That's a year just gone, actually. So it was the 5th of January last year. So you've had a year of buses under public control. I'm not saying they're perfect, by the way, and please feel free to kind of raise issues that you have tonight. But that's united for those who don't use it, that's in a single tap and go system now. So you just tap your card, and then if you get off the bus and get on the tram, you just tap again. But it's got a cap on it, so you can't pay more than a certain, well, it's depending on what you do, of course, but it's often under £10, Danny, isn't it, depending on your travel pattern. So that's like the London system. So the reason why I make that bold claim is Tameside is going to be the big beneficiary of rail integration into the B network, because by this time next year, Staley Bridge to Victoria via Ashton will be a line that is one of the first to come into the B network, and Eleanor, leader of Tameside, and I were launching the first, we greeted the first yellow train, didn't we, at Piccadilly just before the break. You may have seen a picture about that. But the other line that's coming in is Glossop to Piccadilly, Staley Bridge to Victoria. And I think I'm right in saying that every single station in Tameside then comes under the B network. So I think you have around, go on. You might have got me there. Oh, it was all going so well until that point, wasn't it? That's on Trans-Pennine Express, isn't it? Yeah, so yeah, you are absolutely correct. All but one of the stations in Tameside, because these are the northern services that are coming in, because obviously we're not bringing at this moment in time the Trans-Pennine services in. These are the commuter lines that serve the city. And by this time next year, you in this borough, nowhere else will have this benefit, will be able to buy an integrated bus, tram and train ticket. It will be a single cap, it will just be a single price ticket that will give you unlimited travel on all three modes in any given day. It's not going to be tap and go with train, tram and bus next year, so 27, but that will come in 28 when we get the other lines around Greater Manchester into the whole of the system. So you are absolutely going to be the earliest beneficiary, but you will have, far more of your rail system inside the capped B network system. In terms of the concessions, in time, again, that system will be able to, an older person's concessionary pass will be able to be used on that capped system. And particularly if you've paid your top up, that's free then for older people, and you'll be able to use all of it and just tap in and all the rest. And that will also be true, I think, of other concessionary passes, disabled people's pass. And then the last point about cash, I don't know whether the Chief Constable has any view about this. I hear from bus drivers that they would prefer, not all of them, but some of them would prefer not to have cash.
Just take the bus, doesn't it, to hand your coins over?
It's from a safety point of view, I think, that they would like that. And from a sort of smooth running of the services point of view, we found when we introduced tap and go, things speeded up a lot. The kind of the boarding of passengers got a lot quicker than the old, people fumbling around thing. Now, I bet the person who asked the question is thinking, oh, he's building here to saying, right, we're going to... But we're not. We recognise that not everybody lives in a cashless way, And I absolutely understand people who don't want to do that. So I know this phrase that politicians use, we have no plans to, but genuinely we don't. I've heard the call that people don't want to see the removal of a cash option on the bus. And at this moment in time, we're not going to do that. But I do think, I just would ask people at this moment in time just to understand that there are safety and efficiency or kind of speed of travel benefits from doing it at some point. But, you know, those are not currently going to outweigh some of our residents who are perhaps the more financially excluded or, you know, concerned. We're not going to do that, you know, and there's definitely no imminent prospect of removing the cash option from our buses.
Fair enough. Can I ask you about, you mentioned bringing certain services out of the control of Northern into the B network. Obviously, at the moment, Northern, people will probably know, are having some difficulties in terms of like the age of their rolling stock and the relations with the unions, which means that services on a Sunday aren't particularly good. Will transferring the services from Northern to the B network, will they solve those problems, or will you have to deal with the same problems that Northern are wrestling with right now?
It's not so much a transfer as more a co-control, you know, a partnership with Northern, because they, you know, like bus operators work under the B network banner, Northern will be operating under the B network banner. But we are going to have new statutory powers, or I am, to be specific, under the railways bill that is currently going through Parliament. So I will have the ability to specify timetables, levels of service, you know, a whole range of things, to be honest. So, you know, like with the B network, I will have the ability to change and shape the service, but it still will be a partnership with Northern. We hope, and I say hope because it's not concluded, but there may be a deal in the offing, I hope I'm right in saying this, around the Sunday issue. You know, all through the decades, in the privatisation years, this kind of failure to have a 7-day staff railway service was never addressed. And it's a unique thing to the North West. Conductors are not, you know, contracted to work on Sundays. And they don't have to, it's a voluntary arrangement. And, you know, a city region like ours, with all the football on a Sunday and everything else, you know, we can't, and the markets, and every people live their lives on a Sunday. You want to get out and about. So hopefully that will be fixed at some point this year, maybe by the May timetable, I don't know. But, you know, we're really pushing hard for a solution. But what I think we need, though, if I'm honest with you, just a quick point, we need to restore public service to the railways is what we need to do. I felt this when we took over the buses. You know, when you kind of got finally to lift the bonnet on the buses don't have bonnets. What do they have, Danny? When we finally got a look under it all, what we found was the deregulation years led to a real race to the bottom and a failure to look after the staff and the failure to look after the depots. These were depots that we were forced to give to these operators for a few pounds, you know, pittance. And then we had to buy them back off them for millions. You know, that, honestly, stuck in my throat a lot. However, we inherited a pretty, I think, malnourished, threadbare sort of system, and we're building it up through the B network. It's not there yet, as I said. But I think the same is true of the railways. You know, the public service has dropped out during the privatisation years. It's become a very transactional, oppositional thing, and, you know, no one feels, it's not like the police force or the NHS where, you know, the great people who are with us tonight put more of themselves into it because of what it is and what it represents. It's a service, and they, you know, but when it became just like a, you know, one company sort of screwing them down for whatever they could get from this, do you know what I mean? The public service element dropped, and people don't put that bit extra in to make the whole thing work better. And we've got to restore that to the railways and restore that ethos to all public transport, actually, which is what we're trying to do with the B network. So, sorry to, you know, give you a long explanation, but genuinely your borough, I've said this to Eleanor and to Emma, the new Chief Executive of Tameside Council, we've, between us, got an amazing opportunity for you and your borough, because the incentive and opportunity to invest in Tameside will never be better than in the coming months going through that change, because you're on the edge, if you like, or right next door to the most vibrant city in the UK. And, you know, you are so massively well placed to kind of benefit when younger people might come and choose to live in your borough and then have that ease of access in and out of the city. So personally, I think this is a brilliant moment for Tameside. And I want you to know tonight, and Eleanor knows this, I am massively personally invested in making sure you get the most from this change. And we have a mayoral development zone, don't we, over Ashton, Staley Bridge, looking at how we grasp this moment.
Thank you very much. Chap in the white cap.
Great cap, by the way.
It is a great cap.
Hamburg football team.
Great trainers.
Oh, thank you so much. Carry on these.
Andy, thank you very much. Alan Moss from the trade union ASLEF. Absolutely welcome everything you've said about the railways, but I am going to put you on the spot now. When you talk about bringing into sort of joint ownership, etc., the trains in the B network, absolutely brilliant. One of the most important things in the rail industry is the safety of people travelling on trains. So can you give a commitment to the guard remaining on the train in the B network, the safety critical person? Thank you, Andy.
Well, thank you, Alan. A brilliant question. And I can look you in the eye and 100% say I will never accept the removal of guards from trains. In fact, under the Chief Constable's leadership, there's been a sea change in thinking about policing and security and safety on public transport. It's now the 11th district of Greater Manchester, if you like, in terms of for policing purposes. And we have a new Chief Superintendent, Sue Downey, who is the head of, if you like, the Transport 11th District Policing Division. I don't know, Chief, if you want to say something about this, but we fought the rear guard against the last government to stop them taking guards off trains. And we succeeded. And honestly, we will never support that. And if anyone had any doubts about the policy, or do we really need them? Think about what happened on that train from Doncaster to Huntingdon late last year. You know, think for a minute, you know, if you've got, you know, young family members, particularly, you know, young daughters, I would not want my daughters on a train where there was no guard. Would you? Absolutely not. In fact, we've been trying to put uniformed presence back onto public transport through what we've done with travel safe enforcement officers via the change to the buses, lots more staff on Metrolink. So honestly, never. I'm chair of the Rail North Committee. I will never support the removal of guards from trains. Stephen, would you mind saying something? Because it is a big change. And we also brought through something called Travel Safe Live Chat last year, which I don't know if you've clocked this yet, but this is a new service that you can get from the B Network app, which offers you immediate access to GMP chat handlers through discrete means, a QR code or just going by the app, if you're worried about a situation that's evolving on the bus or the tram. And it's a big thing, isn't it? And it's already paying some dividends, isn't it? But the broader priority you've given, Stephen, it's good if you maybe pick that up.
Good. Shall I just stand up so I can see everybody? So good evening, everybody. And one of the great things about the transport system in GM and the ambition that the Mayor has for it, you know, we of course recognise that there are massive economic benefits, that it is one of the most important things that we can practically do to live opportunities, to create opportunities for people and all the rest of it. Now, where do we come into this? Well, fundamentally, it probably builds on the latter point that the Mayor's just made. We do know that notwithstanding our ambition for the transport system, there is an underutilisation of the transport system. There is an issue where not everybody who travels on the transport system behaves themselves appropriately, doesn't pay their way and all the rest of it. And as a result, it begets a situation where, because of fear of crime, a lot of people choose not to use our system. And ultimately, it's a very simple proposition, but we want to make our system, the Mayor's ambition is to make it the best system. For it to be the best system, it must also be the safest system. So we want to make it the safest system such that people will feel safe to use it, will use it in increasing numbers, will pay to use the services. Those who frighten good people will be put off the transport infrastructure. Therefore, people who want to use it will use it in safety and security. it creates more revenues, more usage, more safety, it's an overarchingly good thing. So in theory, it's dead straightforward. But what we have done is move beyond the point of theory under the auspices of the Mayor, working with colleagues in TFGM. What we are at the beginnings of is I think, really exciting program which we look to expand over the next 3 years, which will practically see, in addition to TFGM people who are experts in managing their system, but it will be about having lots of cops and PCSOs riding on trams, riding on trains, riding on buses, working at transport interchanges, and making sure that the whole feeling of safety and security is massively elevated. Because I think it's one of those very practical things that we can do that people will appreciate, and it will then breathe, I think, an additional level of comfort and security into this thing that Greater Manchester deserves to have. So that's the plan, that's what we're now embarked upon.
Good stuff.
I was just going to add, we need to hold our hands up, because when we were building the B network, it was, you will have heard me saying this on the hot seat and other places, oh, fares, we're going to do things on fares, and frequency, we're going to try and improve services, and when those things are important. When we did the Greater Manchester Resident Survey, the single biggest reason why people are not using public transport was safety or lack of, the feeling of a lack of, by some considerable margin. So the changes that the Chief Constable has just described come from our holding our hands up saying, hang on a minute, I don't think we've done the right prioritisation here. So, you know, we are going to really keep working at this. And, you know, I do believe when you get more people on buses and trams late at night, there is a self-policing element. You know, there is the revenue benefit that comes with that, of course, but also it feels safer, doesn't it, if there's not 2 or 3 people on the tram or on the upstairs of the bus.
Absolutely. Well, we may get an opportunity to hear from the Chief again. Crime and sort of safer communities might come up later in the evening. We've also got questions about growth, children and young people. So, you know, if you've got questions relating to those areas, do put your hand up. I was going to move on to a different topic area now, which is housing.
Rob, do you mind? I mean, I don't mind taking some questions, but before we leave transport, I just want to make sure that people are aware that we are going to remove the 9:30 rule on public transport, on older people's passes and disabled people's passes. I don't know if everybody saw that before the break, but that is now a firm decision of our leaders and myself. 1st of March. We have to do a little... Sorry to interrupt you, right. I know you wanted to move on. Let's move on as soon as I finish this bit, but that is now going to be available to everyone. We just have to do a little consultation formally to get the necessary approvals in place. But that's coming in. It's disabled people's bus passes as well. And we are keeping the £2 fare cap for the whole of 2026. So I just wanted people to know that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely fine. We've got a question about housing from Liz Clay. Is Liz here? Liz, excellent. Mic is just coming your way.
It's a long question. The Places for Everyone framework is focused on increasing housing supply in areas of brownfield land which have good transport links in our boroughs and in protecting the green belt. However, Chorlton, South Manchester, in a current proposal on land owned by GMPF, which evidence shows the community are not in support of, our community is faced with losing a multifunctional public realm space as part of a 262-unit housing development proposal that allegedly meets the requirements of the Places for Everyone strategy. How can we as a community protect our multifunctional public realm and ensure that we will still have a place where people can shop, play and meet in a pedestrian environment that links to our other shopping streets in Chorlton? How can we ensure that our district centre, this development is in the heart of the centre, does not just become a residential estate and one that is at the heart of the centre, does not just become a residential estate that is quite significantly taller than existing buildings. How can we make ourselves heard in Manchester and Greater Manchester?
Thank you, Liz. So I guess this is a question specifically about Chorlton, but I guess it has wider sort of implications for other parts of Greater Manchester. How do you balance the need for more homes, which we all recognise we need, with other competing demands, such as the need for community facilities and other considerations? So how do you balance that?
With difficulty is the answer. But and thank you for the clear way in which you presented your question and your concerns. I absolutely understand. Chorlton is one of our jewels, isn't it? As a place, it's a wonderful place to live. But I've been at these events before, and I remember being at one in Tameside before, actually, at the Greater Manchester Pension Fund, where the feeling about Greenbelt was really, really high, and there was a lot of anger about it. We are all, not we, it's more the councils, are under pressure because they have mandatory housing targets, and they can't ignore those. They have to do what they need to do to show that they can build those units. But in response to some of that feeling about Greenbelt, which is very strong, and I know it's still felt in this borough as well, we started looking at more higher density development in town centres. So Stockport is a very good example of what's can be done when you use old warehouse space, or you repurpose an area with modern housing. But it is also what we're planning to do here. When I mentioned Ashton and Stalybridge, we're going to get to work really on building new homes for easy access to that public transport. And the thing I would just ask you to think about is, in some ways it may not replace the centre, it can actually sustain the centre and the services that you have, because what we're trying to do is bring in a new demographic, if you like, to live in places, more footfall, to support the high street and to support the cafes, the bars, the nice places that everybody wants to go to. So I'm not across all of the details of the Chorlton development. I'm aware of some of the concerns that are there, and you've expressed them very well. It's for Manchester City Council and they do have processes where there's public engagement. I think I'm right in saying, but we're trying to get this right, and I don't think you can please everybody in doing this. I don't think it's possible, but I hope you just understand at least what we're trying to do. We are going to brownfield first. That's the policy of Places for Everyone. We're trying to build higher density in those places. We do have redundant, I say redundant because it's not true in your case, but old, outdated shopping centres. We took one down in Farnworth. We're looking at Middleton at the moment, where we may be able to do the same, not completely drop it, but repurpose it. And this is a process that's underway. But I hear you. It's principally a matter for Manchester City Council, but perhaps through the discussions you can have, maybe there's a solution that really works for everybody. More truly affordable homes, more people living close to the amenities, therefore the amenities are actually sustained because of the increased footfall.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions relating to sort of housing or homes-related questions? The chap there in the grey suit.
Thank you. Hi, Andy. First of all, I'm a little bit sorry about this in the build-up to this. Just want to start off, public reporting. I did try and do some freedom of information requests, and I couldn't get all the information, so I apologise. Through Renniker Developments, founded by Darren Whittaker, received in excess of £650 million in public loans from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority through the Greater Manchester Housing Investment Loans Fund. Through these loans, it's been able to deliver approximately 5,600 homes based on Manchester's 20% affordable housing starting point under Section 106 planning policy. That should have equated to around 1,100 affordable homes. But we've got people in Tameside that are, just like my sister, for example. She's got 2 kids and she was forced out of a private rented accommodation last year. And she's tried to go on the Housing Association, but told there's a 2-year waiting list. She's got 2 children. So if we've got such a high waiting list currently, why is Rennica Developments not putting these 1,100 affordable homes in, not just in Tameside, but obviously around Greater Manchester, but we don't seem to have had any of that coming across to us. With him now moving to Monaco as well, is any of that money going to be getting paid back to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority as well? And is there any reason why that Rennica Developments haven't adhered to the 20% policy that we've currently got? That's my question.
It's a good question, and I'm glad to be able to give you a full answer if that's okay, because it does need to be explained.
We have actually had another question from a Charlotte Davies on that same
Well, I'll take
point.
this one, and then
no,
that's okay, so I don't get...
It's about Rennica, so it's
the same thing. Yeah, and I understand there's been some stuff around, hasn't there, about it, and I can see why people look at it and think, oh, hang on, what's that? What's going on there? So I do want to explain directly. The question you asked, will it be paid back? Every penny with considerable interest. Absolutely. And that money, that interest comes back to the public pot, by the way. But let me explain the origins of this, because everyone will look at the city centre from here and see the change and the towers, and this fund has supported a lot of that development. In 2015, I'm not saying that this is just because it predates me, but let me just explain what Howard Bernstein did. People probably are familiar with the name. So Howard Bernstein, the quite legendary chief executive of Manchester City Council, he went to George Osborne and said, there are multiple viable commercial developments around our city centre that are waiting there, but the London-based lenders won't lend because they've got a downer on us, downer on Manchester. And we are confident that this city has got so much potential, but we're kind of being held back by perceptions of people. Oh, you wouldn't want to invest there. That was the general feeling, let's say. And the Housing Investment Loans Fund that you mentioned was created to break that cycle because the markets wouldn't lend. So it came in. It was a £300 million fund that we had to pay back to the government. Actually, it wasn't free money. We had to make sure that it made money, and then we could pay back the money that they give us. So it was never a grant. And that explains, if you remember, you go back to a time around 2017, 2018, 19, just before the pandemic, the cranes on the skyline of Manchester were just, do you remember that time? That fund created that. Because the loans were let from the fund to Rennica, but lots of other people as well, at commercial rates. So there was no subsidies here, not one bit. And this was tested in the court last year. A court case was brought against. This was, challenged in court. Not one kind of chink was discovered. We won on all counts because they were kind of let at commercial rates for viable schemes, and we have not had one default on any of the loans that we let under that scheme. So that is what that is. And actually, we made a profit on those loans, and that profit has come back to start funding social housing. It funds the Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter that we recently introduced, which will have impact here in Tameside. But it obviously will not solve your challenges in the borough, so I'm not going to say it will. But separately now, we're bringing through other mechanisms to build truly affordable homes in much greater numbers because, your MP here secured a record amount of investment for, Angela Rayner secured a record amount of investment in social housing, 39 billion at the spending review, 60% of which is going on social and affordable housing. And we've got a big chunk of that. So that was the last decade, 2015 to 2025. I think it looks controversial, but I think it's built out the power of the city. It's created homes that the people who want to invest their companies here are coming and living in. It's brought prosperity. It's brought jobs, construction jobs in huge numbers. And it now tees up the chance for Tameside to tap into the strength of the city to bring the change here as well and the prosperity as well. So it's a fair, I'm trying to give you a really honest answer because it predated me. And I said to them, this looks a bit odd. What is this fund? why was it done like this? Because it doesn't strike you immediately as like, why, you know, it does, it's an anomaly, or it looks like one. But I hope I'm explaining it quite clearly to you as to why it's been done. And, you know, the gentleman from Renica, but anyone else, you know, they're simply paying their loans back to us rather than a bank. That's it. There's no difference, and that's what the court found last year.
Thank you, Andy. So we've got a question about economic growth as well, which is sort of a related issue. And so if anyone's got any questions, other questions about housing or growth or the economy,
yep.
we'll just go to a question from Tony Brown. We'll come to you just shortly. So Tony Brown, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, he was one of the shortlisted questions, and he asks, as a self-employed business owner facing rapidly rising operating costs, including increased taxes, energy prices and essential overheads, what actions will the Mayor take to support small businesses and sole traders in Greater Manchester and ensure that self-employment remains a viable and sustainable option in our local economy? So self-employment and the self-employed, what can you do for people like Tony?
Well, we're really lucky to have in Greater Manchester the Business Growth Hub. And if you don't know about it, check it out. You know, this is the most established business support service in the country. It provides support to businesses, big, small, and self-employed. It has a program called Enterprising You, which is a groundbreaking program to support people who are self-employed. But it also has a Build Your Business service that's actually delivered through local libraries around Greater Manchester. You know, really practical advice for business owners as to how to, you know, improve their turnover, you know, make more efficiencies. So we're really committed to that. But also we're working with our councils to provide more affordable space for businesses. I think Tameside Council deserve credit for Ashton Old Baths, because I've visited there a couple of times, and you know, I'm sure many of you will know it, you know, remember it of old. I'm not casting any aspersions on anyone's age in the audience, because I think it's quite a while since it was a baths, am I right? Or do you remember it? No, sorry, Alan. But that's the type of co-working space that we want to see more of in our towns as well, because we want to. So there is a load of support out there, to be honest. I'm not going to say it's perfect, and I'm not going to say it's not hard out there. And we've been those who've been saying to the government, look, you're going to have to look again at these business rates. And I'm told today there's something coming, a change coming there, and we've been making that argument to them. I think they should go further. I think we've got to shift the balance of taxation, you know, off, not all of it, because you obviously got to pay some, but physical businesses, I think, are paying too much, and internet businesses probably too little. And I think a bigger review is needed here to sort of get the balance of taxation, business taxation, right. You know, I also have my own concerns about employers' NI and how that's borne a lot of weight, and the businesses have really, you know, we've got to hear all of that and represent all of that back to the government. So, yeah, it's a good question, but check out the Business Growth Hub. They've got a huge amount of support and people there ready to help you.
Thank you. We've got a lady in the second row who has a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy, and also our chair. I'm going to start right from where you finished. Business Growth Hub, yes, tick. Andy Mather, I had a recent meeting with, and I'm here to say that in terms of my own business, I've been a participant in that scheme, and I would have to say it does everything that you said on the tin. In terms of who says what on the tin, in terms of housing, though, we've still got issues. We have issues. I think my colleague over there, when he said about his sister being driven out of her home, this is a real issue. And then when we bring into that the issue of race, you know, we're looking at people basically being policed out of the opportunity to have housing in the way that almost it was happening in the 70s. You know, people are picking and choosing not to have immigrants take their housing. And I think this is a real problem, and it's kind of going under the radar. You find out about it colloquially, but you don't see about it in the news. So it's something that really needs to be looked at, and also that there's a real gentrification in the terms of who's taking the types of housing and that great investment that we're seeing. We don't want to lose, where does the ordinary person go to live in this swanky new town that is Manchester, because it is incredible right now. So it's really those two questions and that I wanted to raise. Yeah. And just a quick one for the chief. In terms of that safety, what do you call it, QR code that you can report on. Again, racist crime happens on transport. And I wonder if there's a way to link that with the reporting systems that he has. I guess it's in terms of the AI and everything that it's possible, maybe. Yeah. And just wanted to raise that in those terms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So two questions now, I guess. Yeah. Housing first.
If the lady behind wants, because I know you've been asking, wait for a while, I'll come to you afterwards. But Elizabeth, if I could take those really important and powerful points, because I remember you raising these issues with me when you were chair of the Race Equality Panel around discrimination in housing and how differential standards are being applied, even by social landlords. And I think that was even in advance of the tragic death of Awab Ishaq. And actually, there was some pretty trenchant comments made by the regulator about repairs and not answering emails and this kind of thing. So for me, we've always got to remember we are the place where a 2-year-old boy died because of damp and mould in his home. And we have got to make that the Kathy come home moment of our era. A boy killed by his home, and you can't differentiate what happened there from issues of race as well, and that seemed perhaps to have played a part. So completely agree with what you're saying and calling for. I'm not, and it goes back to the last question, the gentleman's question about Rennica. I feel we're in the foothills of getting to grips with housing. I'm not going to put it more than that. Transport, I made a joke, but we had to get right into transport, get stuck in and sort it out. And we had to do a bit of that with GMP, didn't we, Stephen? We had to, with Kate and others, we had to really sort of fix GMP because it wasn't working properly 5 years ago. And that's why we brought Stephen in. And, GMP is it's unrecognisable as a police force today as what it was 5 years ago. Housing is a much bigger challenge for the city region, but we know this place can't be everything it wants to be until we remove it from the grip of the housing crisis, and we remove people here from the grip of the housing crisis. And we got a long journey ahead of us to do that. I can say, for the City Council and the leader, Bev Craig, if she were here, I would be wanting her to take the praise for having changed some of their approach. The first social homes for 40 years are currently being built in Manchester city centre on the old Boddington's brewery site, which is quite a symbol of change in relation to not allowing over-gentrification. Because to me, if I look at how London, I admire it in so many ways, but I don't want to completely emulate it. Yes, in transport, but no in housing. And I don't think it would be true to our character of our people. We're not, I said at the start, we are all people living together, working together of different backgrounds. And that means an approach to housing and communities that allows that. And credit to our leaders who are all bringing through that different way of thinking about housing. We've said we want to be a housing-first city region. It's the top priority. If you're not sorting out housing for people, you're not sorting out anything for people. And the thing is, we got more money to start building more social homes, council homes. Let's call it what we would all recognise the terminology. That's a more direct, And the thing about the difference between social homes, Rob, and council homes is again, it's a bit like transport. sometimes social homes are good, but are the providers always accountable to the public? Or are they a little bit... You're calling for accountable housing, I think is what you're... Yeah, well, council housing was pretty directly accountable, democratically accountable to you. And I think the trend of hiving everything off to these third-party organisations in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, under all governments actually, led to a sort of unaccountable Britain, where lots of money was siphoned out by the boards and the services weren't great for people and they tried to complain and nothing was... Well, we've got to get back to a more accountable housing system, more public control of housing. Our leaders, our 10 leaders, want the restoration of what's called the golden share on the boards of housing associations and social landlords, which is a casting vote for the council in that area to be able to, you know, if they're not happy with something, they've got the ability to change it. And that was taken away by the Cameron government, but we think it should be restored. So, long answer, Elizabeth, but the power of your points deserved a long answer. I won't answer for Stephen because, you know, that thing about hate crime, particularly on public transport, I think is another issue we need to get a bit more stuck into this year. Or maybe Kate, you want to pick this because you've been doing a lot of thinking about this, haven't you? When the Chief Constable came in, he set a new service standard for burglary, domestic burglary. And look at the figures we've put out today for the drop in crime overall, but also burglary particularly. It's because the Chief said every burglary will be attended in person and we're going to double the number of arrests and we're going to get a grip on that issue. And that has had a massive impact across Greater Manchester. We think hate crime should have a similar clear standard. Absolute clarity of what will be done, because hate crime left unaddressed has a corrosive ripple effect, a fear effect through communities. And Kate, I don't know if you want to pick up from here, we're going to look at that this year, aren't we?
Watch with microphones here. Yes, we are. So we've been working with Greater Manchester Police, haven't we, Stephen, to agree a standard for the response that you'll get from Greater Manchester Police if you make a report of a hate crime or a hate incident. And that will be captured and recorded every single time. Now, you'll know that there is a national debate going on about what they call non-crime hate incidents. They won't be investigated by the police if they're not crimes, obviously. But again, we will record every single one of those reports because that's important to us to understand if we're beginning to see tensions growing, if we're seeing more division in some of our communities. It's really useful intelligence for my team and the policy work and all the work we're trying to do on bringing communities together and stand up against racism and hate. And we are also, of course, going to have to consult on the hate crime standards that we are developing. You committed to that, didn't you, Andy, that we would want to involve the public in exactly what this new standard looks like. So we'll be talking again to all our equality panels, like the race equality panel that you used to chair, Elizabeth, and our other equality panels to get their advice on what this standard needs to look like. And we expect to start that consultation very, very soon. I think we probably start it next month. But we want to get that standard in place this year so that everybody in Greater Manchester knows if you experience hate and you tell Greater Manchester Police about it, this is the response you're going to get. We're going to guarantee that. It's really, really important because nobody should be going about their daily lives suffering that kind of abuse and hate. That's not the kind of city region we want to be.
Thank you very much. We've got about 25 minutes left, so we want to get through as many questions as we can. We have a lady in pink there who's been waiting very patiently.
So I was just going to ask about the Section 106 money, because currently it goes to the Parks Department, but would it be worth, one of my suggestions is that instead of the money going direct to the Parks Department, maybe it can be put to the council and different departments can apply for that money so that other areas within the council can benefit. And it can be beneficial to young people, the youth service, and different initiatives within the council. And I was just going to say as well, regarding the BNG, I fully support it and I think it's a great idea. But a lot of these areas that are getting the new planting, the council is then having to look and care for those areas. Will there be more investment then with B&G into maybe more jobs as well within the council in those countryside and parks departments?
Oh, some great thoughts there. I don't know whether the leader of the council wants to come in. I'll have a first go at what you're saying. Yeah. I'll just a quick response. BNG, by the way, is biodiversity net gain. So that is when a developer is potentially taking away some green space or changing a community. I don't know if it applies in the Chorlton example, but they then have to put some and more back, in a different or in the same or in a different location. So the greening of Greater Manchester is a really important thing for us. This is again another change. If you look at Stockport or you look at Mayfield Park in the city centre, and there's other examples as well. Go back when I first came in, no one really thought that green space, it wasn't just get some development. But we have changed really, and we really believe that good green space at the heart of development enhances the value of the development, actually. It works for everybody. So, yeah, whether that can be paid for on a budget to the council department, I'm not sure. But on your other point about Section 106, I've had someone put to me recently, back to the towers and the rest of it, the big developments in the city. They were saying, why doesn't some of the planning gain go into creating childcare businesses within, because that would be really good for the residents who live there, or a GP practice in that building, or a school. And actually, if you look around the city centre, Hume and some of the buildings there, you start to see little schools at the bottom of those buildings. And that is a change that's starting, not come through fully yet. Childcare particularly, I'm hearing, is like, that would make such a difference if childcare was baked into the planning thinking. The 106 will pay for a nursery or an early years service. But Eleanor, I'm going to pass the microphone to you, if that's all right.
Have to stand up. Thank you very much for your question. If I could just swerve slightly to another point that I tried to catch your eye about with regards to housing just before I come in, just to say, in terms of Tameside and social housing, under my leadership, it's one of my passions and driving factors for change to ensure that we've got good quality housing across the local authority. And what we've done within the first 12 months of my leadership is bring forward over 10 sites for social housing opportunity. And that will offer over 600 homes into Tameside, with 60% of those minimum social housing. And that was because certainly Tameside, not much different than Manchester, sadly, in terms of the amount of social housing that we've built in recent years. I think when I came in, we were around 20, I think, for the previous year, which isn't enough considering we've got 6,000 people on a wait list for homes, and good quality homes. So that's one of my priorities, and we've got Emma, our new chief exec, and something that we're driving as a local authority in Tameside. In terms of Section 106, it doesn't just cover parks, it actually covers lots of different aspects of infrastructure. And an example of that is Godley Green. Actually we are looking at a health hub as part of Godley Green and the 106 money. It is looking at transport infrastructure, we look at roads. So we've got a broader scope than just parks and those community spaces, but there is an element of that. But certainly there are more things to consider as we continue into places for everyone and growing more of our housing ambitions. So I think if there's anything more technical that I've not answered, obviously Emma can, but yeah, it's not just a parks type 106 investment, it actually offers investment into some of the things that you want it to, hopefully. Schools, playing fields, things like that are already part of our 106 arrangements. Thank you.
Well said, Eleanor. And I just want to say it here tonight. I think Eleanor and Emma, but particularly Eleanor's a year in position? A year, just gone through. I think Eleanor's making a fantastic difference. I think, as I notice, if I'm honest, a real kind of change at the energy levels in the borough, the ambition for the borough. So it's great working with you. And I really think, as I said before, we're never going to get a better chance to improve Tameside. Just to add to something Eleanor said, because I want everyone to just, really be clear about this. The housing crisis in Greater Manchester is still getting worse because most of our boroughs are still selling, or I say forced to sell, social homes through right to buy than they are building new. 2 have gone into surplus in the last couple of years, Salford and Trafford, but 8 are still in deficit. So we've persuaded the current government to remove right to buy, not from existing people, because we're not going to take a right off anybody who's got that right. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. But we are disapplying right to buy from new build, so the new builds that Eleanor talked about, and we are ramping up the numbers, working with Tameside, because we've got some of the funding that will help you do that. So what I'm going to commit in front of you all tonight is, because I hear the concern about social housing that's been expressed in the borough, and the numbers are beginning to tick up, aren't they? I had in my briefing 50 last year, was that right? Or the coming year, I think we've got more starts on site in Tameside than we've had for a long, long time. What we've got to do is, in all 10 boroughs, hit a new tipping point where we're building more than we're losing. And we're not there yet. But I want Greater Manchester overall, net, across the 10, by 2028, to be building more social homes every year than we're losing, because then we're beginning to address the housing crisis. Until we hit that tipping point, we're still going backwards. So 2 are in it, more are coming through. Manchester, I think, will hit it soon, but we need to get Tameside up to that as quickly as we can, and hopefully definitely by 2028.
Andy, thank you. I want to move on to crime and safer communities now, because I know that's an issue that a lot of people probably have questions on. We have a question, and I hope he's here, or she's here, Atta Al-Rasul, who has a question about antisocial behaviour. Is it Atta here? There, great.
Cheers, thank you. For years, in areas like St. Peter's, communities have seen rising concerns, and there is a significant increase in ASB, and the youth do not have enough access to high-quality parks, youth clubs, or community centres. What practical steps can the Combined Authority take to ensure sustained long-term investment in these facilities so young people have real alternatives and opportunities and communities feel safer? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important question, and I'm not going to say it was like, oh yes, but we've got all the answers. Here's another one where I think we've got to work quite a lot harder to put in place proper answers to what you say. Because I looked at our Be Well survey before I came, in terms of young people right in this part of Tameside, St. Peter's ward, which I think is got the ward that has some of the the biggest levels of deprivation within the borough. I think I'm right in saying 50% of young people, so this is a survey of year 10 age young people in Greater Manchester, this is your data for this area, 50% said they had good, safe places to go. So that means 50% say they don't have good, safe places to go. So that isn't, to me anyway, that's not good enough. However, more positively, there is something of an answer. Our violence reduction unit, with Kate's oversight, has developed a community-led partnership in St. Peter's. I'm going to get the names wrong here, but there's about 4 community organisations who are in that community-led partnership. Kate, I don't know if you can remember the names. They're in my briefing there. Apologies if any of you are in the audience, because what we're trying to do is build from the bottom up and create that capacity to provide positive opportunities for young people. I do just want to say quickly, if I might, it is about education as well, though. I've been championing the notion of an equal alternative to the university route since I became mayor, and recently we've really ramped up this idea of the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, the MBAC. I want to work with the Violence Reduction Unit to make sure young people who are identified at risk of crime quickly can go into a supported placement through the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, and they connected with a work experience opportunity and get support to hold that opportunity down. So it's a huge issue for us, and I think we've got differential progress across the city region. But I think youth crime needs more attention. Knife crime actually, in the latest stats, I think is coming down. Now, I know that wouldn't be the public perception, but it actually is, which suggests the Violence Reduction Unit is making inroads. I do think there's more to do in the borough. I do. And I think there's more to do in relation to places to go, support for young people. And I think we've all got to, I can see Eleanor nodding, I think we've got to put a bit more effort quite a lot more effort maybe, to create that. Because I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, and Ellen I'm sure will, but I don't think you've got one of the youth zones that we've...
We've not got a youth zone now. We do have a family hall within St Peter's and active youth officer within St Peter's, but we don't have a youth zone.
We can look at that, can't we? Because... Okay. Oh no, definitely with my, I committed to in the manifesto to create more spaces for young people. But if you think of Madlow in Oldham, if you think of Wigan Youth Zone, Bolton Lads and Girls Club, there's an organisation called Onside who've created these places, Hideaway. There's some brilliant provision not far from you, but we need a bit more of it in your area as well, I think.
Thank you very much. There's a lady in the brown jumper who's got her hand over there.
What are your thoughts and feelings surrounding Ashton's Pride and Place allocation, and what types of change should those working and living in Tameside's most deprived area expect to see over the next 10 years?
I hope you don't mind if I pass the microphone to Eleanor, because this is one that's more led by the council rather than the mayor and the combined authority.
Would you mind just repeating that for me? Sorry.
Thoughts and feelings surrounding Ashton's Pride and Place allocation, and what types of change should those living and working in Tameside's most deprived areas expect to see over the next 10 years?
I think I'm really keen to see, following some of my cabinet in the community sessions, more engagement with our communities, more insight from our communities in terms of what you want where you live. We've seen some investment in terms of that street scene and what we call civic pride. And I felt that's been really positive. Obviously, Andy's mentioned our transport-led regeneration, and I think for younger people, certainly, and those people accessing work, living town centre and accessing transport is very convenient, but we want to feel safe and we want to feel like we live in a good town, don't we? So I think certainly more engagement, understanding what people want to see, and diversity of offer so that it offers housing, leisure, retail. It's not just a one-stop shop, but I also think it shouldn't be dictated by one person. I need to know from everybody what they want, where they live. One of the great things about Tameside is we've got 9 distinct towns, and each and every one has its own identity. So it's understanding what people want within their town. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eleanor, because the Pride in Place funding, which came last year, didn't it? I think I'm trying to remember how much it was, but it was quite a lot of money, wasn't it? So there is a lot there. I can promise you as well, we are ready to supplement it. I've not mentioned it tonight, but Greater Manchester launched late last year a Good Growth Fund. So building on that housing thing I was talking about before, we're going to create our own fund, a £1 billion fund, to start investing to support our mayoral development zones, mayoral development corporations. So Ashton, Staley Ridge are very much in line for that funding. So I know this is a strange thing because we don't normally say this as politicians. Funding, I don't think, is the problem. Getting it right for what people want is the issue, because it's unforgivable if we then drop something in and everyone says, we didn't want that. And that has, let's be honest, happened, doesn't it, in the past. So, doing it carefully and with you. But that's the idea of the mayoral development zone, the mayoral development corporation. It's going to be lots of things, really making the most of your transport offer, building new homes around that transport, better green space, active travel, cycling, walking, making it a livable place. All of that will put the pride back in. But honestly, I see more potential in your borough than I do in a lot of other parts. I'm going to get accused of doing all the others down now. But honestly, I think Tameside is ready to sort of totally spring into action.
Fantastic. You mentioned sort of opportunities for the youth as it links to ASB a little earlier. I thought it was maybe a good opportunity to bring in this question from Leanne Frankish, which was one of the ones I shortlisted. Unfortunately, Leanne is not here, but she asked, given the rising levels of child poverty in Tameside and the continued strain on schools caused by insufficient funding across the education system in England, how will the Mayor work with local authorities and national government to ensure that children in Greater Manchester, particularly those in our most disadvantaged communities, get the support, resources and educational opportunities they need to thrive? Now, you were talking about today in Manchester, weren't you, about sort of technical education for our young people. What can you and leaders like Eleanor do to give more opportunities to young people from our more disadvantaged communities?
Well, we're really focused on that issue because post-pandemic, I think, we've all felt it in our families perhaps, haven't we? The pandemic generation, I think, has been knocked back, haven't they? It took a lot from them, didn't it? And I think we've got an obligation now to work that bit harder for them to put some support back in place. When I came in as mayor, I mean, I'm proud of talking about it, but I will mention it in this context. I brought in a free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds in Greater Manchester. It's called the R Pass. And I'm very passionate about it. It's not just a bus pass, by the way. It's also linked to free opportunities, cultural, sporting, training. So it's like it's a system that really is a passport. And for me, I always say to them when I go to visit schools, and I've been to, I was at Rainer Stevens not long ago here in the borough, go to other schools. It's a kind of opportunity for me to say to them, the R Pass, it's obviously you help pay for it, let's be honest, but it's a statement of our belief in our young people. We're backing you, we believe in you, and I always say that to them. But there's more that can be done, and the R Pass does link to the MBAC. I know there's a lot of jargon here, but the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate. Give them the opportunity to see an opportunity that they want to do in the Greater Manchester economy, and then a 45-day work placement, which is the innovation that came under the Conservative government, to be honest, that was part of T-levels. We actually think that was a really good reform, and we've embraced it. And we announced today that we've got 1,000 new T-level placements that have just been secured by the Business Growth Hub, who talk to a lot of our big companies. But if you look at where those placements are coming from, well, Stephen and Greater Manchester Police are now offering T-level placements. The B Network in big numbers, the Christie Hospital. We've created a first in the country non-university route into midwifery, working with the Royal Oldham, because they've got a T-level route going to an apprenticeship route now for midwifery, which is absolutely brilliant and groundbreaking. We were IBM today in the city centre. They're putting T-level. So this is what we're doing. You can see what we're doing. We're building that alternative to the university route. Because I think one of the big challenges, I take the points about places to go, but to me, the big problem is if you're at secondary school here in this borough and you can't see where school is taking you at the end of it, that's when Stephen and his colleagues start maybe becoming familiar with some of those young people as they lose hope, they drift to the sides, what's here for me, get drawn into different dangerous things. We don't want that. Every young person should be growing up with hope. Every single one. Every single one. And I see no reason why that can't be achieved. I want a 45-day work placement as a guarantee for every young person growing up in Greater Manchester. And we've got with the 1,000 we've just got, we've got about 3,000 now. I need to get that number up to 20,000 if I want to achieve what I've just said to you. But that's the goal by the end of the decade. Then you can say, right, look, you're at school, here's a placement at all of the different organisations I mentioned. And I think it's getting the hope back in their heart is the main thing, I think. And then once they've got a bit of hope and a bit of direction, a lot of more things become possible than if they're feeling that nobody listens and no one's bothered. So it's a massive agenda for me. I'm totally passionate about it. And I think for those of us in a certain age, I'm now nearer 60 than 50. My birthday yesterday took me closer to that milestone, which is still...
Happy birthday,
surprised I'm so upbeat tonight, to be honest with you, because I'm still struggling with that new reality that I'm in. But for those of us of my vintage, and bear in mind, my first job was in Greater Manchester in 1991 as an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian. I think you're becoming unpaid again in media, aren't you now? Well, we were then. But we had nothing here. There was nothing here. I had to go from here, go south to get on in life. Loads of people did. We had to leave to get on, didn't we? And that's not true anymore. This is the change in Greater Manchester in the 30 years since I was coming back from university to try and find a job here. Now there are businesses and employers here we could not have dreamt of. The Bank of New York. Who ever thought they would have a strategic global location in city centre Manchester? Booking.com. I mean, I could reel off 100 names to you, big names. I want work placements in all of these places because the change is we've got the opportunity, the people and the jobs are there in our city. What we haven't done yet is connect the young people where they are to those places and a path. I keep saying, this is where Greater Manchester is at. The kids can see the skyscrapers from Tameside of the city, but they don't see that as their world, and they can't imagine a path for them to those places. These work placements are intended to give them the chance to walk through the door, give them enough time to lose the imposter syndrome, and then feel, yeah, you know what, I could actually work here. I could work for GMP. That's what we're trying to do. So, sorry to go on a bit there, but I'm really totally passionate about it. It's a massive part of our mission.
Thank you, Andy. We've got 5 minutes left, and I wanted to go to a sort of miscellaneous question. We'll see after we've asked that question whether there's a chance for any more before we wrap up. Is Sebastian Moore here? Sebastian. Mic is coming, winging its way in your direction.
Thank you. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Sebastian.
With so much change in the region, what is the thing that concerns you most about the direction Greater Manchester is going in? And I'll add on, will you come and speak at an event I'm organising on the economy of the North? That's not on the paper.
You've got to take these opportunities when you get them.
Okay, I'm trying to wonder what my... It's not... well, it's not a Conservative Party. No, I don't mind. Even if it is... So the thing is, just on that, I think the reason we're succeeding is just to say something. We're pioneering a new politics in Greater Manchester. You know, I hope you've noticed, I don't do any point scoring in this role. That was only a little joke there. You know, I actually left that behind when I left Westminster. We work together, place first here, don't we? And it's all about solutions, and I hope that's come through tonight. Place first, solutions, work with other parties. That's what we do. You know, Lib Dem leader of Stockport, we work with him, don't we, Eleanor? And I think that is the way you kind of, you know, the change you make when you work like that is so much more than when you're all doing this pettiness that the public just don't care about. So what's the risk to us in terms of our direction? I do think housing is a risk. I'll be honest about that. I think local government finances are a risk because the foundations of our devolution are based on our strength of our 10 councils. And I'm sorry to say, and it's true of this government as it has been a predecessor, they're letting some of those foundations crumble too much. You know, the thing for me is, if somebody walks out of their front door in this borough or anywhere else in Greater Manchester, sees a pothole or sees a park, and this touches to your question, and they go to a well-meaning, loads of councillors who are here tonight will know what I mean. If the response is, yeah, but we've no money, there's no... If people feel that nothing can be fixed as basic as a pothole or a park can be mown, how will they think anything can be fixed? And then they'll have this negative, this feeling of neglect, won't they? And the alienation that comes with that. That honestly worries me. I think we have to have a change of direction in relation to the finances, the resources, the empowerment of our councils. And I don't see enough yet of recognition of that crucial point. This is the foundations of our democracy in this country. And if they are not functioning and can't fix the basics like a pothole, then Stephen and his colleagues are going to be dealing with ever deeper levels of alienation, a sense that nothing works, the country doesn't work. Well, they're not doing things in my area, but things are being spent over here for other people. You know, that worries me, I'll be honest with you. And I play back things to Westminster that they don't like hearing from me. You know, I'm not the poster boy down there, let me be honest. They're not always, I'm not, a bit persona non grata at times, but I'm going to keep doing it because I've played back to them in this job messages that they need to focus on, that they neglect, and they are neglecting our councils. They are crucial. They're the front line of support in every community. And they've been, under all governments, been allowed to sort of crumble to too little. And that creates the alienation that we're all then dealing with in our daily lives. So thank you. It's a really good question. And yes, whoever's organising this event on the economy in the North, I'll do my best to come and speak at it.
I hope you'll appreciate we've not asked you one question about leadership of the Labour Party at any point during this evening. I'm not going to start now, just in case.
I want to get on to the really big question. VAR. When's someone going to ask me about that? Sorry.
We've got time for one last question before we wrap up. There's a young man in the light blue tie. He's been waiting very patiently. Let's see if we can round off the night with a good question.
I'd like to ask about the grooming gangs in Greater Manchester. So several inquiries across the UK have found that the fear of being labelled as racist or other titles have led to failures to act on predominantly Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs targeting predominantly white girls. Can you promise us all now that you believe that you will put the safety of our young women and girls before the fear of upsetting people? Because the Labour government that you were a part of up until 2010 appeared to put our girls last. And in areas such as Rochdale, Oldham, and even Tameside.
Okay, well, that's a really serious question, and I'm not, again, going to do anything other than answer it very, very directly. So it needs an answer. But I can give you a very clear answer in terms of what I have done. And it's actually an opportunity for me to speak very personally, because I get attacked online about these issues, and I want kind of you to have an answer tonight. I want this audience to have an answer, and I hope some of it might get out into the wider Greater Manchester world and wider world. I was elected in May 2017. This was even before what happened at the Manchester Arena. The programme, Three Girls, and the documentary Betrayed Girls was aired literally within a day or two of me taking office. I think actually on the day I took office, about Monday the 8th of May, something like that. I had been Shadow Home Secretary before I left Westminster, and I had dealt directly with Rotherham issues in that context. So I knew, a lot about the issue. And I heard Maggie Oliver speak, I didn't know her at the time, speaking for the first time on Radio 5 Live, commenting on those programmes that had been on the TV about Rochdale particularly, saying that she had been part of an investigation that had been closed down overnight and just, shut down. So I know this isn't what people say, but I'm not the politician who hears something like that and says, well, nothing to see here. I commissioned the largest inquiry, the longest running inquiry into child sexual exploitation, or let's say into the activities of grooming gangs that this country has seen. And that was established at that time, but it got going in 2018. And the people we brought in to do it were the Rotherham review team, the people who were recognised as rigorous when it comes to this issue. It had three components at the start: an investigation into Manchester and what Maggie Oliver had said about what was called Operation Augusta, which was closed down in 2005. It had a second stage, which was going to look at Rochdale and the issues well known there that were the subject of those television programmes. And then it was to have a third stage to say, learning all of the lessons of all of that, are we able to assure the public of Greater Manchester that things have been done now to, make sure that there is never a sense that we look at everything that was done and we look at the reasons why those decisions were taken and, make sure that there's the change in culture, the change in practice needed to put safety of kids absolutely number one in every single thing that we do. And if you look back, you can go back and I think Rob reported on this, so you can jump in and tell me if anything I'm saying here is not correct. We had the Manchester report in 2020. It was called a blistering report by the Manchester Evening News at the time. It led Greater Manchester Police to launch something called Operation Green Jacket. It was an entirely new police investigation looking to find if there were perpetrators who were not properly followed up at that time. I don't know, Stephen, how many arrests, charges and convictions we've had under Operation Green Jacket now. It's way into the double figures, I think I'm right in saying. We then had a request from Oldham to add a further stage to the inquiry before the Rochdale report, because there were rumours circulating in Oldham around this issue and some of the things that have been done or not done and not followed up, and things the council had not followed up. And I received a request to initiate an Oldham inquiry, but it came through a different route because the wider thing was already ongoing. But I accepted that request. I agreed to it and asked the review team to add it to what they were doing. But it was different. It wasn't a sort of high profile. It was more about things that were being said, rumours that needed to be investigated. So the nature of the Oldham inquiry was different. But nevertheless, that review team did it. The review team that created a report that was called Blistering by the Manchester Evening News, and would later look at Rochdale after Oldham. And similarly, the chief was there, Kate was there, I was there. I think you may have been reporting. Again, absolutely, hard-hitting report when that Rochdale report came out. The suggestion then is that we somehow covered up in Oldham. But how? I mean, how would that, if people are putting that allegation at me, well, that is impugning the review team, the people who'd done those other pieces of work. That's saying that they were complicit in, it's an utter nonsense. And there are people online, I don't know, for their own purposes, are kind of circulating stories that are constantly meant to look as though the whole Greater Manchester system, we did the exact opposite. And I can say to you tonight, I had meetings with officers in the GMP at the time, Stephen's predecessor, officers in the councils, where the review team was saying to me sometimes, there's too much resistance, we need to break through this, we need access to X, Y, and Z. And I had those meetings with Kate's predecessor, with Kate as well, as we went through this process. Greater Manchester did not look in the other direction. Greater Manchester was unique in many ways as a city region, not just one little sort of place. As a whole, we looked directly at this issue. We held a complete mirror up to ourselves, and we went through that whole process to the point beyond the Rochdale report when we came to the final stage, which was overseen by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. Ofsted were involved because of the Children's Services side of things, the CQC from the Sexual Health Services side of things. We were found that we were fit for purpose because we'd made all of those changes that we needed to make sure the culture was right. And I'm glad you finished on this question, genuinely, because I see the stuff online and it's designed to go back to where we started. It's actually designed to create hate, and they're trying to pull everyone apart. Oh yeah, and that's what it's doing. And I'm really glad I've got the opportunity to say 100%. We have never done what they accuse us of doing. And I was one of the first this time last year to call for a national inquiry. And the reason I did that was because I recognise, although I'm saying to you, we did a powerful voluntary review, I recognise there were limitations to that process because it did not have the power to compel people to give evidence. Because an inquiry at this level can't do that. We don't have those statutory powers. And if you read the reports that I've mentioned, all of them, you will find references in those reports to saying ex-officer of the council or ex-police officer retired refused to. We couldn't compel. And I said, this time last year, against what was then my national party's position, no, we need a national inquiry. Because that accountability part of this whole story, we could not achieve through our review. And hence, we felt there needed to be that further accountability process. But I can finish by saying I am absolutely certain that we have done the exact opposite of what they accused us of. Because in Manchester, we have a new police inquiry called Operation Green Jacket, I mentioned. In Oldham, we have a reopened new police inquiry called Operation Sherwood that has started to bring charges against perpetrators who should have been dealt with before. And the same in Rochdale as well. As a result of the Greater Manchester Review, people have been arrested, charged, convicted, and therefore our communities made safer because we turned towards it. And I say it to you, you've asked a very fair question, and it's a matter of public concern, and therefore it deserves an honest answer in a forum like this. Well, I 100% will stand by what I've done. I would never turn away in the way some of these people describe. I wouldn't let any consideration of, nothing is more important than the safety of kids to me living in Greater Manchester. And any allegation that I don't take that totally seriously as my top priority is a complete affront as far as I'm concerned. The way in people just throw that around on social media. Well, I don't do that. I've never done that. I never would do that. And I'm confident now I have a police force here that is absolutely with me at my side, operating in entirely the same way. So thank you for what you've raised, but I hope you'll consider that a very full answer.
Andy, thank you very much. Obviously, we've gone a little bit past time, but I think it was important to let the Mayor set out his position on what is a very important issue. So, yeah, we have come to the end of our time. I want to thank everyone for turning out on such a cold night. Thank you for the 4C Community Centre for accommodating us, and for Andy and for the GMCA for organising this. So
it's a great place, by the way, isn't it?
It is a great place. And let's give Andy a big round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you.